Obi-Wan Kenobi Part 1 and Part 2. Part 3, actually, by the time that you guys see this review, is going to be up on Disney Plus as well. But we're going to be reviewing Part 1 and Part 2. We're going to have a spoiler-free section, and then we're going to go into spoilers. If you want to join me for the spoiler section, which I hope some of you will, then we can stick along and get to more details. But for those of you who don't want to know anything about the show, I'm going to keep it very vague. Now, for what it's worth, as soon as I'm done recording, I'm running off to watch episode 3, or part 3, excuse me, and then gonna sit with my thoughts for a bit so I could record another review. I'm really excited to continue watching more of Obi-Wan. Doesn't mean that it's perfect. So, Obi-Wan, you're dealing with, I think this is a series that everybody in Star Wars fans were hoping to see, this period with between Obi-Wan Kenobi to Ben Kenobi. Not only are you dealing with my and many other people's favorite Star Wars Jedi, you're also dealing with, at least for me personally, one of my favorite eras in Star Wars, that period after Order 66 where Jedi are still around, they're trying to adapt, they're in hiding, they're just in pure survival mode, which you do get to see some of with Obi-Wan, and I'm really glad that we saw that. It does tread some familiar ground. We might talk a little bit about that, but ultimately, it's interesting with the clones too, what they're going through. You got to explore that in the Bad Batch and with some of the later Clone Wars series, and with Jedi Fallen Order. I love Jedi Fallen Order. So there's a lot riding on this show, and there's things that admittedly are done really well. Like, for example, Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. Ewan McGregor is over. The moment you see him on screen, he has his hair done, the beard's trimmed, he's in costume, and you look at it and go, oh my God, Obi-Wan is back, and it's this pang of nostalgia, but thankfully they don't bank too heavily on that, so it really did work. And on top of that, you're getting to see this new side of the character, something that I was really interested in exploring. And the moments where you're exploring Obi-Wan's character, I think are great. Those are my favorite parts of the show. The moments where you actually get into some of the action, arguably where it falls flat, where it really starts to go poorly, is when you get into some of the action stuff. I liked seeing this man. You're looking at a really complex character at this point. This dude who has lost literally everything. The apprentice, the Padawan that he didn't want to take on, that he came to love as a brother, killed by his own hand, as far as he knows at this point. The Republic that he fought to protect, gone. The Jedi Council, his religion, gone. His friends, gone. Mace Windu, dead. Qui-Gon, dead. Yoda, disappeared. This dude has lost everything. I mean, what more could you possibly take away from him at this point, besides Luke, who he's sworn to protect? And that's all he cares about at this point in his life. All he has to do is protect the boy. And I liked seeing that element of the character. I thought that was interesting. And there's moments in the show where naturally, we know that he's going to get pulled back into the action. You know that it has to get to that plot. And the way that they did it, I wasn't really crazy about. I wasn't wild the way that they wrote Obi-Wan to have to reprise his role as a Jedi. But there's some things that went really well. Like, there's moments where Obi-Wan is presented with a choice where he can decide, I'm going to be a Jedi. I have to be a Jedi. This is my moment. And he just flat out goes, no, I'm Ben. I need to survive. I have my mission. Protect the boy. You know, I was kind of just expecting this moment where he turn around, like there's a moment where somebody needs help and you just bitch slap him and go, no, protect the boy. Why don't you understand? All right, it doesn't get that dramatic, but you know, you'll see what I mean if you watch it. And in this series, there's some things that, like, admittedly, I think if you wanted to focus more on the character part of this story, there's some plot threads that really don't go, they serve their purpose. And they do add weight to when Obi-Wan does decide to get back into his Jedi stuff. And it treads some familiar ground. If you've played Jedi Fallen Order, really does tread some familiar ground, as if they just watched it and went, yeah, let's do that. In fact, you get a lot of that, both good and a lot bad. But it does add more weight to him going back and having to take up the lightsaber again. But unfortunately, it doesn't go really anywhere. Some other cool things, you get to see some other planets, some unexpected, that I really enjoyed getting to see a new look at. You get Joel Edgerton as Uncle Owen. Was great to see him reprise his role. You also get to see Bail Organa. Jimmy Smits reprises his role as Bail Organa. He's great to see. I loved him. He does a great job too. So some really great casting, but you also have some really bad characters in the show. Not bad casting, bad characters. It has nothing to do with the actress herself. You probably know where I'm going. The new Inquisitor, Reva. Reva is just flat out not a good character. She's not well written. She's the exact opposite of what anybody wants to see in a villain character. And I say that they borrowed from some things, both good and bad. Like Jedi Fallen Order, there's some moments where you look at it and you go, did you just, is that where that came from? There's even this short film that Star Wars Theory did, where there's just a scene that looks like it was pulled right out of Star Wars Theory. And then you get moments like Reva, who is basically, if you took all the worst aspects of Kylo Ren and General Hux, threw it into a character and said, this is a good idea. No, it's not. There's a reason why people like Thrawn, Grand Admiral Thrawn in Star Wars Rebels as a character. Why they like Darth Vader as a character. Because they're menacing, they're calculated, they're not prone to throwing temper tantrums, to having hissy fits, and to otherwise being angry for the sake of being angry. It's as if you took a Disney villain from an animated movie, or like a Pixar villain that's just animated evil, like comically evil, and stuck them in this very serious show that's telling a character story, and said, here we go, fans will love this. It wouldn't be out of place if they just decided to replace Reva with a character with the big evil cartoon mustache and the big long beard, and they're sitting stroking, going, twirling the mustache, going, yeah, Obi-Wan, I have fooled your plans once again. Yeah. Right? I wouldn't, it's so comic how over the top she is. And that's not a fault of the actress at all. And admittedly, I'm not saying that Reva's unsalvageable. I think that there is a decent character, because you do get to hear a little bit about why she is the way she is. And on top of that, you are dealing with, admittedly, a character who's been trained just to be flat out terrible. I mean, she is an Inquisitor. They do horrible stuff. They've been trained by some of the worst people in the galaxy. That doesn't mean we want to see her just be completely ridiculous. A better way to put it is, my big concern is that this show is serving as a pilot for an Inquisitor-based show, rather than being the Obi-Wan show that fans want it to be. And I think that can be very dangerous to making Obi-Wan as great as filling the potential that Obi-Wan has, especially when you're bringing these actors back for a limited amount of time. If you want Reva to be the star of a show, give her a show. I think it's made worse by the fact that Reva is surrounded by villains, by other characters. She's not alone. She's not the only Inquisitor. And she's surrounded by Inquisitors that are massively more competent at their jobs. And then you get her, who's the main Inquisitor that we're focusing on. It's a bad juxtaposition. Then there's some things that I can't get into right now for the sake of spoilers that really just don't make sense. There's some decisions that were made to help drive the plot that were just done terribly. I mean, if you want to go with comical, there's a scene, it literally looks like you could have pulled it out of the Three Stooges. It was just abysmal. It was so poorly done, and you have to think the director looked at this scene and went, yeah, that's the one that we're going with. And there's a myriad of ways that they could have done certain things better without removing any of the story. Like, they could have had the exact same plot, the exact same events happen without the need for some of this stupid, ridiculous filler stuff. And that's the direction they decided to go in. And you wonder how that didn't get cut out at some point in the process. It's there. And for example, at some point, we know that Obi-Wan is going to have to find out that Anakin is alive, and that gets done pretty early on, it's fine, I get it, and you could see the moment when he realizes that Anakin is still there, Obi-Wan just sells the part. He does amazing with how his reaction to it, it's real, it's visceral, it's tangible, but the way that it's done, the context for which it's found out was really pretty poor and pretty stupid and anticlimactic, and it took away from the weight of Obi-Wan's response. I don't want to go any further than that for the sake of spoilers, but the last thing too that I just want to bring up, and for non-spoilers, is that there is some lore inconsistency that starts to go on as you explore this era of Star Wars. There's one thing that happens in part 2 that blows up, and it's 10 years between this and episode 3, 10 years between episode 3 to now, and then there's about another 10 years from now to episode 4, and there's some things that happen that just make you question, because by episode 4, when that comes around, the Jedi are this legend, this godlike figure that people aren't even sure if they're real, and yet there's certain things that happen that go, well, how'd you not know? there's some lore things going on that I think especially like bigger, like huge Star Wars fans that really pay attention to kind of the timelines and stuff going on that are really going to be disappointed in. But even someone like myself who views it more casually, there's a bit of inconsistency with this, and it does take some of the weight away from other areas of Star Wars, but I'm willing to look at it as its own thing, to be honest, so I'll be a little bit more forgiving in that regard. So that's it for the non-spoiler section. Admittedly, if I had to give it a score, I would say so far, part 1 and part 2, I'm going to give a 7 out of 10. It's good. There's a lot of things that I really like here, and there's a lot of potential I see for the series going forward, even for a character like Reva, who I think has the potential to be redeemed. We'll have to see what direction the rest of the series decides to go in, and that's really going to determine the fate of how good this plays out. And I'm crossing my fingers. I want it to be good. I really do. But thank you guys so much for watching, and if you're going to join me for the spoiler section, I look forward to seeing you in just a bit. Alright, so now we can get into spoiler section, which I can talk about whatever I want here. You have been warned. Spoilers will be taking place. So, let's start off with one thing that I mentioned was there's this moment that really comes into play. I like the moments where Obi-Wan was challenged with his beliefs. Like, even the simple thing, the scene where the guy wasn't getting paid enough, they're working, Obi-Wan is working, carving out meat from this gigantic dead creature, and they're all getting paid at the end of the day, and the owner, I guess, the guy who runs it all, says it doesn't pay someone as much as they should get paid, or is starting to pay them less, and he complains. Then they just look at Obi-Wan, and he goes, oh, but you got something to say there, buddy? And Obi-Wan just shuts his mouth, doesn't say a word. And I like that, because Jedi Obi-Wan probably would have been like, nope, gotta stand up for the people. Like, you pay this dude. You pay this dude. No, he can't say anything, because he's trying to just make sure that he stays as low-key as possible. And I appreciated that. Then there's the moment with the other Jedi, which I think could have been done a lot better. That's the part where in the spoiler-free section I was saying there's a thread that doesn't really go anywhere. If you wanted to spend more time building up Obi-Wan and the stuff he's been through, I honestly, while I do want to focus on Obi-Wan, I wouldn't have minded getting to see this Jedi in a bit more action. You do see it in the beginning when the Inquisitors first come and he saves the one guy, but that's it. And so ultimately when he gets killed, it serves the purpose of sort of being a motivator for Obi-Wan to decide to take up the mantle, the stuff that he's witnessing even after all the shit that he's been through. It does serve its purpose, but it doesn't go beyond that. And I wouldn't have mind getting to explore it a little bit more. Maybe he could have tried to help him and then it ended in failure, which then now, if he tried to help him, it still ends in failure. And then now, when Bail comes to him for help and he says, I need your help, and Obi-Wan's thinking, I just tried that and it's not gonna go how you think. It literally mirrors what happened with Luke Skywalker in the sequel movies. This isn't gonna end how you think it will, right? It's a pivotal line that we heard Mark Hamill in interviews all the time talking about, and it genuinely would work here better than it did in the sequel movies. But unfortunately, nope. He gets hanged, and that's the end of it. That character is gone. That Jedi's gone. But eventually, Bail Organa, and a lot of it focuses on Leia, because the thing that gets him back into the adventure is Leia getting captured. And I'm generally against child actors in a lot of things. I don't think that they when they're brought in, not performance-based, like you really need to get a good performer to really sell the role. And I think that, you have Leia as a child actor, and she's snarky, and she's witty, and she's acting much older than her age. There's one point where Obi-Wan turns around and goes, how old are you? She's like 10. And he goes, you sure about that? Because she's just not acting her age whatsoever, which is fine. I get it. Okay. However, then there's moments where she's just completely incompetent because they need to use her as a plot device. And that's where my problems really start to come in with child actors, because she just serves as a conduit where she's capable where she needs to be, and she's competent and smart and intelligent where she needs to be. And then she does some stupid shit like later on, when eventually at some point Obi-Wan, she's going after, because Leia gets captured, gets transported to another planet. Bail Organa comes, asks for help. This whole thing was set up by the Inquisitor Reva. Why she had to capture Leia in order to draw Obi-Wan out to get to that planet, to then meet him at the planet, instead of just being there with it doesn't make any sense. Instead, they could have just captured the daughter, flew her away, waited for Bail Organa and seen what he did, because he inevitably went to Obi-Wan. If she was smart, she would have followed Bail, would have known exactly where Obi-Wan was. But no, we need to go after Leia. It goes after Leia. They're on this planet, and the chase to get Leia. First off, it's just the Three Stooges fumbling around trying to find Leia, and they're just bumping and they're running into, there's a twig, literally a twig that's blocking the way, and you see them running and bumping into it, or Leia goes under this log, and they run up to a log and they go, ah! Like, it's this insurmountable wall they couldn't see from 30 feet away. We're not talking about woods that are so thick or a fog that's so heavy you can't see in front of you. No, but they get up to it, and you could see just how goofy it looks. It's absolutely ridiculous. And you could have done the exact same thing. She runs out into the woods, boom, bag over the head. You got her. You didn't need this stupid, foolish chase scene. You could even see that they're running at a quarter speed while she's like running her little toddler legs off, like going through. And it's adorable to watch her running through. But it's just, it looks so ridiculous. And then you get that again. It wasn't enough to just do it once. They didn't spot it one time and go, you know, this actually kind of looks a little bit silly. Then again, later on in the episode, you see the exact same thing as Obi-Wan tries to capture her. Ultimately, though, it felt like a lot of this could have just been done in one part. You could have brought Kenobi out. You didn't need to go through this whole sequence where he's rescuing her and this whole sequence of developing Leia's character in the Obi-Wan show, if you get what I'm saying. It's not that I didn't appreciate it, I enjoyed, but it did feel like just this stuffing, having to, yeah, okay, we get to see Leia kind of talk back to her cousin and stuff and see how smart she is, but it was fluff. It was fluff at the end of the day. That's not always a bad thing, but here it just made for this inconsistent thing, and you're supposed to want to care about saving her, but there's no tension because you know where Leia goes, and so it's one of the problems with prequels. But this whole romp, eventually you get to the point where it's the Inquisitor versus Obi-Wan, and she's kind of has them cornered, but not really. There's right before that, there's this one segment that I have to talk about, which is the clone trooper that there's a scene where you see a clone trooper who's out of the army, grizzled veteran, beard and everything. He's in his armor, and he's just sitting there holding out, looking for spare credits. He's useless. He's thrown to the side like trash. The Empire just stepped in and they used him for a bit, as we saw with the Bad Batch, but ultimately at one point they just went, nope, see ya. So it was cool to get to see that side of it. But then you have this moment, and I was saying how there's a moment, Reva sends out this this message to all of the bounty, I think maybe it's just the bounty hunters. I thought it was on everything, if I remember correctly. It was just everywhere. Sent out a message to everybody saying, Obi-Wan is here, find Obi-Wan, get him, we'll pay you tons of money. That would have been an insanely cool moment for the clone trooper to hop back in action. And they had this moment where he doesn't recognize that Obi-Wan's a Jedi, so he doesn't know. But if it's going by the lore of the Clone Wars, he has programming in his head that says, I need to kill the Jedi. I have to. That's good soldiers follow orders. And so to have the soldier just turn around after it, at first he doesn't recognize that it's Obi-Wan, and then Obi-Wan comes across and they look at each other, and his look as he sees what has become of these friends he's fought, could have been Rex, that could have been Cody, that could have been any clone trooper. Ewan McGregor's performance once again sells that moment. But then if he came back later, he knows there's a Jedi on the planet. You see him charging instead of these random schmuck bounty hunters who can't hit for anything. You see the clone trooper running up to Obi-Wan, and he's oh man, if Obi-Wan would have had to fight back against him and tries to save him and tries to hold on to whatever goodness he has left in this phase of, again, just utter despair that he's going through. Like, there's a couple plot threads that could have gone places that just didn't. There's a scene with the guy who's pretending to be a Jedi. So how, like, this Jedi is helping people escape. It's 10 years after the fact. In another 10 years, you're telling me that nobody remembers anything like that? That it's just completely obsolete? maybe a select few people do. It's weird consistency. It's weird inconsistency. I really did like his character. Haja was his name. I liked him. I thought he was funny. I thought he was entertaining. He provided a nice relief. And then, of course, he had his own little arc that went on, which was kind of pleasant to see, actually, when Obi-Wan fools that he's wrong and then he comes back and helps him later. It was pretty solid. I liked it. And it's not beyond my realm of believing. Of course, not every single person thought the Jedi were bad. Again, Jedi Fallen Order, we see it with Prouf. He turns around as Cal Kestis and Prouf are looking at this crashed Jedi starfighter, and Prouf turns around. He's like, you know, I always knew that they all couldn't have been that bad. All of them couldn't have been traitors, right? So there's people out there, and there's people out there who must have known they were good, but then when they're supposed to forget them, and I don't know. But then you get to the one thing that doesn't make any sense to me, which I'm sure it'll be explained later on, which is how Reva knew that Anakin was alive and that Anakin was Darth Vader. Is that not the most uptight, secret, top classified information possible? I mean, sure, this woman's done her homework. She was able to figure out that Bail Organa and Obi-Wan had some kind of a connection in the Clone Wars, so she used that to her advantage. How she possibly knew that kidnapping the daughter and that they were close enough where Obi-Wan would give up all of his values that he's had for the past 10 years to go off and chase Leia? No idea. Maybe she knew that he was in charge of watching one of the Skywalker children. Maybe Anakin, this is part of his plan. Maybe this is all Anakin's doing. But why then would he trust the Grand Inquisitor, who we find out dies? That's the other thing too. When I was saying how Reva's surrounded by competent, interesting characters, yeah, the Grand Inquisitor, he looks a bit goofy. He does. But he was intelligent. He seemed like he could have pulled off that smart, educated villain role. But no, Reva kills him because he wasn't smart enough to see that coming. Couldn't have force deflected it or blocked it with his own lightsaber. Or even, hell, had them fight. Maybe that was out of the budget to have a lightsaber fight that early on. They spent it all for the Anakin Obi-Wan fight. Or the Darth Vader Obi-Wan fight later on. Maybe. I don't know. But he couldn't do anything, so he gets stabbed. And he's dead. Maybe he'll come back later. Yeah, he's gonna come back later, right? He has to. And so, I don't know, just Reva's character, and it's not Reva, it's just the things that the writers have the character do and the circumstances that she's put in. It's just not believable. It's not fun. It's not interesting. So hopefully, again, as I said before, she could get her redemption. But ultimately, the goofy chases that happened not once, but twice, the just complete plot device of Leia. We got the Leia stuff. Put her to the side. She no longer needs to be there. She just needs to get back to Daddy. And now Obi-Wan's been exposed. So maybe it can just become the Inquisitor, Obi-Wan, and ideally what we want to see is Anakin stepping into the plate. If Anakin comes in, just crushes this Inquisitor and says, I'm taking over now. This is my duty. Because that's something you would do. So we'll see what happens. But ultimately, good episode. Looking forward to the next one. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you thought down below. And as always, I hope to see you all next time. So long.